side are you on? Which side are you on? Hello, and welcome to the introductory episode of We the Working Class. In this podcast, YouTube channel, we are going to explore the labor market, the struggles of everyday Americans, and hopefully what we can do about that in the future if we organize. I come from a background of technology and history, so I started with history. 2008 came and I realized I wasn't going to be able to use that education, so I got a business degree and moved to Seattle and started working as a tester at Xbox, and I've built up a QA career since then. So, and I've had good success, but of course, my company went under in March, so I've been out of work since then, trying to keep up, make bills, and look for other jobs. But quite frankly, it's really hard as a QA professional when there's so many people with a lot more experience out there also looking for jobs, and then you have code that can essentially check itself for bugs today. So I need a bit of a career pivot. So I'm looking for that. I'd love to stay in QA. Hopefully, the AI hype dies down and I can get back to work. But for the meantime, let's talk about how we can make that work experience better when I get back to it, or when we get back to it. I'm sure a lot of you, especially in the tech sector, are feeling the same pinch that I am. So many layoffs in the last 5 years. Just, geez, it's like the Meta laying off 7,000 people. That's more than the population of the town my dad lives in. So just a whole town worth of people gone. So, yeah, in this podcast, we're going to talk a little bit about that. But I also want to encourage people to join unions. I want to help provide some support and resources. Eventually, we're still working on collecting a lot of those, and we will be adding those in the future, as well as some things in the comments below, or in the description below. So we will be doing that. I'm also a very staunch socialist. I believe a government that does not take care of its people or leaves any of its people in suffering is a failure of a government, especially if they have resources. It's July 2026 right now, so we've just seen probably the worst person to gain this title, but we saw someone become a trillionaire. $1 trillion. Like, can't even fathom that amount of money. That's like deep time when you try to imagine Earth 10 million years or a billion years ago. Like, it's just so bad. So, especially when that's like a quarter of all the money that the U.S. has printed. So, but again, his wealth is hypothetical. Our suffering and pain is real. Our debts are real. The credit card I took out to buy groceries for my family is real. So I don't know how we're going to pay that back, but I'm sure I'm not the only person who has that problem. So, and it doesn't seem like anyone's making it easier for us. We have inflation, greedflation, shrinkflation, and then they blame the previous administration because they don't want to upset, dear leader. And man, just propaganda, the gaslighting, the venality, it's just all of this. These, from the Congress to the White House to the Supreme Court, it seems like an all-out attack on working people. So I think we can change that because there are so many more of us than there are of them. And yeah, let's just get together. So that is my stated goal. I also want to offer encouragement in the form of some historical stories. So I will be going through, I'm researching all of the labor disputes we've had in this country since the founding of Jamestown. As many of you know or are learning right now, the Jamestown colony was founded by the Virginia Company in 1605. It was just 100 people. They were basically farmers, laborers, just trying to get things up and running. And, build structures and infrastructure, build wells, all that sort of thing. Now, on October 1st of 1608, the merchant ships Mary and Margaret arrived in Jamestown. On board this, since they had, the basic infrastructure was already supposedly built, they brought in some specialists. So I found a lot of conflicting information on these specialists, but a lot of it was pretty obviously self-serving. So I managed to get as accurate as I could with these groups. So from what I found, there were eight, I know, 16. There were 16 specialists who were brought in. Eight of them were supposedly Polish people, and eight of them Dutchmen and German. So the Dutchmen were brought in as carpenters and specialists to make, things like wooden tools and things that you needed a little more skill than just chopping and planing and adzing. So, um, so these specialists came in. We have the Dutchmen making wood. We had the Germans making glass. Best I could find, they were from the Baden-Württemberg area, and the Dutch were from the Free Dutch Republic, not the Habsburg, Spanish Habsburg Netherlands that also existed at the time. And then there were the Polish laborers. These were mostly tar extractors and potash extractors. Tar extraction, which is very important for shipbuilding. That's how you kept ships from sinking. And potash was used mostly in the glass making. So, so we had these specialists, and their point, obviously, there's so few of them. The goal wasn't for them to be the modes of production; it was that they were the specialists. So they were the people who would come in and teach. They were teachers, and they would have English apprentices then. So that's what they did and how they started. And there's a lot of apocryphal information in here, mostly from the Polish League of America. But we did they did have a successful yes. So that was the point of having these specialists here. They were there to teach and have English apprentices, and then the goal being the colony is completely self-sufficient, because I mean, you have to kind of put your mind with where these people were then. This is the equivalent of us having a colony on the moon, right? Like, we don't want to ship tons of crap up to the moon constantly, like just day-to-day items, so we would need them to make their own containers, probably have a little production facility just to make day-to-day goods. That was the point with the Virginia Company. So they they had these specialists come in to try to teach everyone, because apparently a big cost was shipping glass from Europe to America, or the colonies, I should say. America didn't exist yet. But they they actually were not able to produce glass. This is irrelevant to the story. These groups of people were important because they were teachers. They had the knowledge. That was their real capital that they possessed. Um, so they were very important and essentially very, very much needed for this colony to be self-sufficient in the long run. Um, and when the Virginia Bay Company turned Jamestown from a private venture into a public entity, so like more of a governmental agency or governmental structure instead of a business structure. They decided to have a House of Burgesses. So prior to the House of Burgesses, there were like 5 members of the Virginia Company who chose a leader. So in 1619, voting rights was decided. They decided to give voting rights to the citizens here of Jamestown. So they built a House of Burgesses, established in 1691, and oddly enough, they only extended citizenship voting rights to colonists of English descent. Um, you know, we kind of, that's history over and over again, limiting rights to a small group. However, we see that these groups of specialists instantly said no to this. They said, we have been here for 11 years at this point. We've done the work. We've taught your English people how to make glass, or how to extract tar and do better woodworking. Like, we made this colony. We were part of building it. And that's where I see the connection to today. Like, union memberships, anything we build, anything we work on, we're contributing. Like, we, the working class, are what build things. Maybe someone above us has the idea and directs us, but honestly, I don't see how, one person's vision is superior to a small group of people's visions, or, too big of a group, too many cooks in the kitchen. We've all heard that, but I don't know. Voting rights. Obviously, we need everyone to vote. A full democracy is better than selective. But yeah, we see that in early 1619, the House of Burgesses was established. The voting rights were established. For lack of a better word, charter or constitution of this colony. I guess charter is a better word. The charter of this colony, saying that only English citizens could vote, instantly was pretty much struck down. So on the 21st of July, only about a month after the House of Burgesses opened and the charter was written, they extended all of the colonial immigrants, male immigrants, voting rights. So from that point on, I couldn't find any evidence that any of these immigrants held any office, but they were eligible to at this point. So to conclude this story, it wasn't really about money, because, they probably didn't have much of a monetary system at the time. It was more bartering, I'm willing to bet. A couple onions for a glass jar, whatever, I don't know. But the labor won the case. They were denied rights, and they said, well, we will withhold our specialization and our labor until you give us what we want. So there you have it. The very first recorded successful labor strike happened in 1619. Pretty early on. The first colony. So what we're doing, what we want to do, what our goals are nothing new. They've existed since the first House of Burgesses on this chunk of land that we Americans call home. So I hope that gives you some encouragement that labor wins when we get together. So let's get together. And if you liked my commentary, liked my little historical snippet, those will get more elaborate in the future. There are like 4 sources on early Jamestown, and all the original founding papers were burned lost in a fire. So I had to start with the Jamestown papers at 1621, and I was beyond what I needed. So Um, so yeah, that if you like the content, you like our little historical snippets, if you like the goal of electing Democratic Socialists, and you like the goal of participating in a labor union, I know a big goal of mine right now is to work with the tech workers union. I think there are some places that have that, and I know there were some tech workers at Microsoft that recently were laid off, even though they were unionized. But maybe if we have more people in unions, I mean, there's so many hundreds of thousands of people just right here in the Seattle area where I live, and um, yeah, there's so many tech workers. There's so many other workers. There's so many of us that can get together. And so if a union rep comes by, listen to what they have to say. If you're looking for work, I'm there, right there with you, my friends. Like, it's rough out there. I wish you all the best. And I hope you got something out of this. If you did, like, subscribe. I will try to keep going with this project. Got a lot of dogs in the fire right now. So, yeah, hoping to get something going. Like, subscribe, and let me know. We the workers unite.